Hey guys, welcome to episode 61 of the JLS Gaming Show. Every time I see that intro, I just think of the Blades of Chaos, man. You know what I'm trying to say? I just start getting my whole Kratos, you know what I'm saying? And we got a special guest here, guys, right? We got that Game Dragon on, a personal friend of mine that I've known for not long enough. I'll say not long enough, right? That's what I always say when people ask how long I've been married, man. But I haven't known him long enough, right? But we're going to get into some great topics and everything like that. Blades of Chaos. He knows me when I used to think I was Kratos and shave the beard and the whole Kratos, everything like that, right? But not the new. Now I got the new Kratos thing going, I think, right? I just need to grow to Rick Ross
with
or
maturity,
whatever.
right? It comes with age. We grow like fine wine, so.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk around the house and say boy to my son all the time. Say, hey, clean your room, boy. You know what I'm saying?
I
Did you
tried
beat
that.
that?
It did make a difference. He still leaves
It
the room
doesn't.
the way it is.
I just don't understand that, man. But again, I'm always like, hey, knock everything out, and then just you got all these games, all these toys, all this stuff, right? Just clean your room, leave it clean, and then focus on playing everything else. I don't understand how they get it messy. I contributed to it. You know what I'm trying to say? Buying them damn Legos, right? Why they had to come up with Mario Legos, right? So they came up with Mario Legos, and that's the arch enemy of adults, right? Because you step on a damn Lego barefoot. And so instead, Mario, they came out with them Legos. So now they're leaving Legos all over the house. He's got like 10 Mario kits. So I don't know. But I would never buy that Nintendo one. Did you buy that Nintendo one?
I wanted it. I couldn't get it. And then by the time I was able to get it, I was like, you know what? I'm glad that I did not invest in this because it's just.
Why?
You understand, Legos have been the bane of my existence since I had kids, right? I mean, they look awesome until you actually have to build the damn thing, right?
Yeah,
And it ends up me building it and them destroying it over and over again and me having to rebuild it. And so, as much as I am very excited about what Lego's been doing lately, especially with Nintendo, I just can't put the time in to build these things anymore just to have them destroyed. I had a whole like Halo universe set up once, and my daughter walked into the room excited with her book bag, and she knocked the whole thing over. And that was like, I want to say, it was probably 10,000 pieces, and I just gave up after that. After that, I threw my hands in the air. I'm like, you know what? No more Legos. No more Legos. They can have them, as long as they're under 300 pieces, I'll build it for them. But none of these big, will make me cry when they destroy them.
So you guys heard that. So Will, Shadow Dragon over there is a Lego master builder, in other words, is what he's trying to say. So he's a Lego master builder. So be on the lookout. We got the beautiful Liliana LaSalle. They're getting ready for Easter and everything like that. So let's get right into it, right, Shadow? Let's talk a little bit about, have you watched, I only watched the first episode, the Playing with Power documentary on Crackle.
Oh, I didn't. No, I didn't even know about it.
So everybody out there, I know a lot of people don't know about it. It's like a 6-part documentary, and each part is like a movie itself. It's like an hour and 10, 15 minutes. I watched the first part. It really gets into the deep history of Nintendo on that first part. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. If anybody else has seen it, chime in. But it looks pretty cool. It's executive produced by like Will Wheaton, Sean Astin, right? And a bunch of other kind of luminaries. It's got Howard interviews with Shigeru, Howard Phillips. It goes back a lot of the nostalgia, man. Remember the Nintendo? What was it? The Nintendo, the guys that whatever they were, the helpers, right? That you call and it's like $1.99. Yeah, like $1.99. Dude, those jackets are like collector's items. Like I saw one in a museum. I'm like, really? But it's kind of nostalgic, man. So and it gives you a lot of background. Like these guys, Nintendo. And it's ironic that they were so Disney-like for a while, right? Where it's like, oh, no bad content, no blood, no gore.
Until
right?
Sega.
Yeah. Remember Mortal Kombat?
Oh my God. Who could forget?
Yeah.
And I remember Mortal Kombat for Super Nintendo. I remember getting really excited going over to my friend's house. He had the Super Nintendo version. I had the Genesis version, right? I went to his house to play because the graphics looked better, right, on the Super Nintendo. And so it felt richer. And until he did one of the fatalities, and I was like, what was that? And he's like, oh, that's a fatality. And he had never played it in the arcade. And I told him, listen, you have to come to my house, and we got to play a little Sega, and you got to see what a real fatality looks like. And so it went from freezing somebody, which is what you did in with Sub-Zero and Mortal Kombat, to seeing the whole spinal rip. And he was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" I was like,
Yeah.
"It is." And it didn't matter that it looked a little less, clear than the SNES version, because you had a closer image to what, or closer representation to what the Mortal Kombat game was supposed to be. And I think that wasn't the beginning of the war, but you could see the rivalry between the two at that time, right? And then we also had all this stuff going on with games were making kids crazy, and it was in Congress, and right, you had the government trying to fight Acclaim because of Mortal Kombat and all these things going on. And so it was a really exciting time to be a kid, I think, because you got to see a lot of great games, and you also got to see Nintendo mature by force.
Yep.
And it's something that to this day now they have their core brands, but it's a good thing that they had opened the door up for these mature games that were coming out. And I think that kind of helped them survive for the most part. Besides the internal nonsense that was going on at Sega, that really helped push them along. And if it wasn't for, I guess, Sega and Japan's kind of hubris, right, that they, America wasn't gonna be the thing that carried them, I think they would have survived, and they would have, continued to be a #1 contender along with Sony and everyone else. So.
Yeah, and that's always the thing, that's a great point, right? And segueing a little bit onto Nintendo, and it seems like they come out with something revolutionary, and then like what you were saying, then they screw something up, right? And then they come back, and when you think they're dead, and then they screw something up again, right? And that's that. So like what you were saying, so you got the Super Nintendo, which is a gem, right? Mm-hmm. Then you got the N64, which was like, okay, I like it. But then you got the GameCube, and then you got the Wii, then you got the Wii U, now you got the Switch, and now the Switch Pro, where everybody keeps talking about. And, I've said a couple of things on the show, and you and me are both technologists in terms of not only in our day jobs, but also in terms of tech and early adopters, so to speak, right? Remember, I had Google Glass a long time ago and stuff like that, smartwatches. And I know you personally on the mobile devices and everything like that. When people say about the Switch and the Switch Pro, I keep telling them, I'm like, dude, it better have 4K. Okay, it has OLED. Like what? Like you and me probably got phones that we threw away, Shadow, from 4 years ago that had OLED and 4K. Android phones, right? Like
that Tegra chipset isn't going to carry them any longer. Like they really need to start considering, and I think it's almost a fear, right? Because the problem with them is they're a roller coaster. So when they succeed, they really succeed. And there's this fear that builds. Like, with the Switch, it was, millions of systems sold, right? A lot of hype around it. And, they had failed with the Wii U. That was kind of like the placeholder, the foundation for the Switch. Now it's like, okay, what do we do now, right? Now that mobile phones have really caught up, we have all these streaming services, right, with Stadia and Xbox Ultimate. I think things are getting a little narrow now, and they're no longer going to be able to lean on the laurels of here's this portable system, because it's no longer as portable as it used to be, right? And so if it wasn't for all their first-party games and everything that they have already, as far as partnerships, they understand their customer for the most part. But, things are moving in a different direction now, right? And, I think streaming, we've discussed this before, streaming is going to be the future because as, corporations like Microsoft invest and Google continue to invest in it, we're talking about being able to bring full catalogs online to everyone. And now we're at a point where infrastructure can basically support this, these things where we couldn't do that before. And so a subscription service for $15 a month that gives you a whole library of games, is more attractive. And now you got to remember, the generation is very different. They're not like you and I. We're used to the physical media, right? We're used to I want to hold it, I want to own it. the incoming generations are already used to everything being distributed. Look at music, right? They don't know what CDs are. They would never go into a store and say, I'm going to buy a CD. They're going to either download on Spotify or download, MP3s. And even downloading MP3s feels old and archaic, right? Nobody really does that anymore. They have a subscription, and that's that. And then oddly enough, they'll go and they'll buy vinyl, right? And they're like, oh, if I want to feel nostalgic, I really want to be nostalgic, so I'm going to buy a record player and go find some vinyl. And things that weren't even on vinyl then, right? You're like, why are you getting this on vinyl? Like, there's no benefit to it, but whatever. You can't explain to them that this, you just let it go. And so as the generation moves forward, right, this lack of a need of physical media, these services make more and more sense. And these phones are killing it. Like I've experimented with a lot of phones with the Xbox service, and it's been great. And now they do things like they're adding actual touch controls to games that didn't have touch control. And I'll tell you, it's not bad. Not bad at all. So they really need to either trim down, because the Switch is a big system. It's fun. I like it. Not very powerful, right? We're talking about, low res when compared to other devices that are out there. And they're constantly having to chip down the look and feel of great games to get them on the system. So I don't know what's going to happen with the Switch Pro.
And that's one of the things we got. Oh man, this is a good one to come back to that. We'll come back to that right after we finish this talk. That's a great question there, right? So, and we'll come back to that one, right? Because that's the topic du jour, right? But what you're saying is spot on, right, Shadow? And the thing about everybody's hyped up, and they're talking about these technologies, and they're talking about DLSS, right? And essentially, which is a version of kind of like upscaling on the fly. Let's say it's using some AI and et cetera, but and sure, it'll make the games look better, right? But at the end of the day, this Switch, it might outsell the next gen systems this year still. And I don't know if that's around the shortage. I don't know what's the pricing. I don't know, but let's see if Nintendo maintains that. What they do, are they going to try to compete in the next gen or what? But when people getting all hyped up around things, it's like I keep telling people, I've thrown away phones with better specs than what people are saying with the Switch Pro 3 years ago, right? So with OLED, with this, and they're saying, oh, it might have, and they're saying 1080p. I'm like, dude, they got to do 4K, right? So segueing into the next gens real quick. What are your thoughts so far? We're about 5 or 6 months. It's April 1st, April Fool's Day, April 1st in a few days. What are your thoughts so far on the current gen? I keep saying next gen, right? Because it still feels like we don't have those great next gen games to really, really, really capitalize on it, right? Halo Infinite on the Xbox side, and PS5. They're coming out. PS5 is coming out with some of the exclusives real soon too. But for example, Avengers, I finally got it to download, right? But the PS5 upgraded version. But I'm reading and seeing that the Xbox X version is better. So now I'm sort of like deflated, like, well, I should have got it for Xbox Series X. It's on freaking sale now for like $30 because it's bombing, right? Or it bombed. I bought the $100, I think it was, deluxe set, and I still haven't really had a chance to play it because it was unplayable on PS4. It crashed on me after like a mission where I was like level 10 or phase 10, and I said, screw this. The load time, ridiculous. What are your thoughts on the current gen, next gen, whatever you want to call it, but the PS5, Xbox Series X?
It's funny, and I hate to sound cliche, and this is cliche nowadays, but the pandemic, right, I feel has really impacted where these two kind of giants want to be right now, right? And so, it's hard to tell whether the pandemic is being used as an excuse for them, like if they were already going to be delayed, because we've seen this before, right? Next gen launches, they say they're going to have all these titles out, and then what happens? They launch it, and then there's a very small library of first party games that exist, and then they lean on your typical kind of money makers, your Call of Duties that come in every year, your Assassin's Creeds, like things like that are cross-platform anyway. So I don't think anybody's really winning or losing right now. I think, it's a mission to fix what's going on with the chip shortage. How many more systems can we get into households, right? It's kind of trying to dominate that footprint. I personally, still play what I want to say are PS4 and Xbox One games, right? Because that's really what's out there. I don't care if it's got the upgrade version, right? I've played the upgraded versions. It's an extra 30, 40 gigs on my system at each time. And to be honest, like the differences are nuanced here and there. Yeah, I do notice the graphical uplift, but that's not really changing when it's a game I already played, right? And then now 2 months later, there's an uplift. I'll give you an example. A lot of people don't like Cyberpunk. I played it on the Xbox One. I loved it. I enjoyed it.
I like it. Yeah.
It had its glitches, but it was a phenomenal game. But you know what? When they released the upgrade, right, with the uplift, I don't know if I'm gonna really go back because there's so many other new games that are coming. I'll probably load it up for a bit.
Yeah.
And it's already it's gone. Like the time is gone. The one thing that I'll say that Square Enix did right was with the remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is already amazing, right? I mean, we're talking about like graphical gem to begin with. They said like we're adding a couple of extra levels and a couple of quality life fixes, and so FF is probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. FF7 is like, you can't walk around this house without tripping on some type of Final Fantasy memorabilia of some sort. But even then, like that uplift, what am I really getting out of there, right? It's not like a first-person shooter that I'm going to be playing every day, right? I already went through the experience. I probably will go back to finish off some trophies, and I probably won't even notice the difference. So right now, I don't think there's any game that's out there that I can say, wow, this is like mind-blowing, right? And and it's weird because I think that the younger generations, and I hate to say younger because it kind of dates me, right? They're playing things like, these games are not graphical gems at all. They're not very complex. Among Us, like, that thing runs on a phone. It looks like, somebody drew it in their living room. Like, no offense to the devs. I think the game design was amazing, but let's be honest, compared to the powerhouses, the AAA games that are out there, like it baffles me to see, like my kids go from like, I don't want to play, the next, Resident Evil or whatever is out. I'd rather play Among Us. I'd rather play a lot of these social games because honestly, that's the only way they socialize nowadays, thanks to this pandemic. And so I think it's a unique time for these organizations to try to figure out how do we lure, the other generations back in, right? Because it's everything social now. And you see Microsoft kind of going that route. They're experimenting with making their online services, for the most part, almost free, right? Like, and that's news that came out not too long ago. So you can join co-ops and things like that. It's a very interesting lure because this is what folks want to do. They want to socialize in games because they can't socialize in real life.
And that's that advent. That's a great point. That's the advent of what a lot of people are calling metaverses, right? The stuff like that, right? So that's a great thing and a great topic, man, that we got to talk about on another show. The advent of metaverses and like what you were saying, social in these video game lands, right? Because it really ends up being that, and I see it firsthand. I don't think she's in the chat right now, but she's probably watching. With my daughter, my little 6-year-old daughter, it sits there and plays Roblox, and that kind of universe there, and with her friends and the social atmosphere there, and like you were saying, in the pandemic, her best friend, she plays there every day with her best friend that she hasn't been able to see physically in a year, right? They see each other in virtual class in school in the morning, and then after class they're playing. After they do their homework and clean their rooms, folks. They're playing their Roblox. So that's a great one. Let's get right into, we got some questions in here too, man, piling up, but let's get right into it. And let's talk about diversity in gaming. So Shadow, take it away, because that's at the same time, while it's very focused, it's also very broad, right? Because there's just so much gaming, right? You talked about careers, development, social streaming. So there's just so many avenues to tackle in there. We're not going to have enough time, and we can always do another show. But it's a great topic that needs to be discussed.
Sure. And what I want to put forward first is I am in no way, and I don't think you're in any way, we're not trying to gaslight anyone. You know, this is not, you know, to stir the pot or create any further discord. This is to have an honest conversation about what's happening in gaming, what's happened before, how we've arrived here. You know, the one thing I want to say is that I think, and being a gamer basically my whole life, right? I think as soon as I could have picked up a controller, I was playing gaming.
Yep.
I feel like it's always been a medium that's been further ahead in the times than the times themselves. And when I talk about this, when we talk about diversity in gaming and inclusion and representation, like, think about characters like Lara Croft, right? I mean, she was a strong female character in gaming, leading role, right? Franchise. Sure, she was probably a little over sexualized in the beginning, but this was something completely new, right? Where we had this strong female lead pushing forward and kind of standing toe to toe with with the guys that usually represented the mix. It was usually a white male, right? And if it was a game that came from from Japan, it was a Japanese male, right? And so female representation was kind of left as auxiliary characters, NPCs, or assists that came in, here and there, right? And so, when we look at that platform, and I think, and I'm not 100% sure, I want to say that Lara Croft kind of started the trend, as far as fame came, right? Like, I think she's the first major female gaming character that really got the ball rolling where it became mainstream, right? And led to movie franchises and a whole bunch of other things. And then you look at, as games evolved, right? Games like Resident Evil, right? Where it was a male protagonist at the beginning, then became both, right? Jill Valentine and kind of Chris Redfield, and it was kind of split between them, right? And honestly, playing as Jill Valentine was actually easier, and you had a better game experience, I felt, than when you played as Chris Redfield. So interesting twists like that. But now when we talk about minority representation in gaming and just media in general, like I'm kind of a little torn, because there's the concept of cultural appropriation, right? And I think we lived through a very interesting timeline, right? We lived through the 90s, and that's when we were, our teens, and we kind of really absorbed the culture around us. And at that time, that word, that term, cultural appropriation, didn't really exist, right? I think it was an interesting time because you saw groups like Wu-Tang Clan. They were heavily influenced with a lot of things that came out of kung fu movies, right? They really were into Asian cultures, into incorporating that into their sounds, into their beats, into a lot of the things they did, right? Into their branding. It was a big thing. It was a beautiful thing. I think it made their music better, right? We had things that came out of there like Afro Samurai, which is awesome, right? And so for me, I think I've had a different experience than the generation that came after me, because we came in a world where, like, it was a beautiful thing, all this kind of cultural sharing, right? And it wasn't being, some folks may say it was misused, and in some instances it was, but for the most part, there was a lot of I think contributions across the board of media, because there was all this sharing going on. You saw it in comic books, you saw it in gaming. People were really appreciating, games coming out of Japan, right? And this was the first time where, I think RPGs were like heavily accepted, right? Like the Final Fantasy series was probably one of the ones that pushed it through, but then you had Namco Bandai bringing like every single anime version of anything under the sun, right? A lot of folks were introduced to Dragon Ball Z and things like that. So all that sharing was awesome, I felt, in my experience, and that's what I experienced, right? Now there are things that I'm kind of disappointed in, and I'm going to be flat out and honest with you. I think that organizations like Disney, Marvel have been very lazy when it comes to how they deal with diversity, right? Their answer has been, these band-aid fixes of, okay, I'm going to make an Asian Incredible Hulk. I'm going to have, a female Thor. I'm going to have a Black Puerto Rican Spider-Man, right? And that is almost more offensive to me because it's like, I'm not going to make a cool new character that is a minority. We're just going to take, this white character before, a white male, and we're going to flip it and we're going to make him a minority for now. And that doesn't solve the problem, in my opinion.
You know what? I'm going to pause you right there because one of the questions kind of ties into that from Cole Orton, right, on Twitch. He's asking, in regards to historical games, do you agree with people that say diversity in games shouldn't be forced if it breaks historical accuracy, basically rewriting history, right? So it kind of ties into what you were just saying, right? Where here they're kind of trying to force a square peg into a round hole, but at the same time, and Marvel DC is notorious for this with the MCU as well, where they're even right now, the Freedom Fighters or whatever, and Captain America and the Winter Soldier, right? In the comic, it's a male, right? And now they flipped it and gender swapped it, right? So what are your thoughts with respect to what Cole said? And I'm gonna post that one up there again.
Yeah, and kind of tying back to what I was just saying is, I don't really agree with it, because I don't think it solves the problem, right? It's really a band-aid fix. When I think about pivotal changes, right, I think about like Todd McFarlane and Spawn, right? Where here he took, basically an African American and highlighted him as the lead character. And he was new, and he was amazing, and he was awesome. He was intelligent, right? He was a very complex character. There was a lot going on, right? And more so than, there's being a superhero who's black and being a superhero, right? And I felt that, like Disney leans on the, okay, I'm gonna check the box. Here's my superhero movie. Let me check the box and make it a minority. So at least there's one or two minorities that fill a role. Versus like Spawn, when Spawn came out, it was less about, I'm checking the box. Like, no, like he's a black character and he's a superhero and he's complex and, and he's he's an amazing character, right? And I don't think taking something like Bruce Wayne, for example, right, and making, I'm not saying this is happening, but if they made him Hispanic or black later on as some type of change, to accommodate, to appease us minorities, that wouldn't make me feel good because Bruce Wayne is an iconic historic character. I grew up with that character. It's doing a disservice to the original character, and it's not doing a service to me as a minority by slapping a coat of paint on him, basically, and saying, okay, now he's a minority, so you guys should be happy, right? That doesn't make me happy. What makes me happy is when you really put the time and effort into a character and involve them from the ground up, and they come from this background, and that's who they are. And that kind of leads to gaming in a sense where, Miles Morales was a character that I was very conflicted about, right? Because I grew up with Peter Parker, and I felt that this was another example of just taking an iconic existing character, slapping the minority tag on him and moving him around. And now, if it wasn't for the game, if it wasn't for playing the game on the PlayStation 5 and the amazing job that the team did behind that, I was blown away. And here's why: because they incorporated him being Hispanic into his life, because that's what it is. This is the life he lives. There was Spanglish, in his conversations while he's, kind of going around the city and talking to his mama. When he was in Spanish Harlem, I felt like I was there, even though, of course, it's not the real breakdown of the city, but, the Puerto Rican flags here and, the graffiti and all, but all done in a positive way, and I felt like I was on this journey with this character, and they didn't miss, the things that made him a Latino, like they let, like I remember walking around the room and seeing these records from his grandma, and I was like, oh, I know that, like that's crazy. And they took the time to really do the research and get it done. In my opinion, get it done right, or at least in the right direction. And that's what my problem is with most of the other stuff that happens with Marvel. It's like, okay, they came out with an Asian Incredible Hulk. Well, all you did was make him Asian, but you didn't talk about like really his experiences or anything like that yet. And I don't really, other than the fact that he's an Asian Hulk, like it didn't seem like it was a deep character. Like they didn't spend a lot of time building out that background. They just threw a label on him. And maybe the Miles Morales Peter Parker thing is a little different because both of them can occupy the same universe, right? They're not trying to replace one with the other. They went with the whole multiverse, right, or Spider-Verse aspect of it, which, you know, even though they stole from DC with their multiverse, I thought was a better way to do it, because now both characters can continue to exist and grow in their own right. And honestly, I like Miles Morales more than I like Peter Parker now. You know, and even though he's got the iconic like Spider-Man name, that was the only example that I can find where it was done right. But it wasn't Marvel that got me there. It was playing the game that got me there to really appreciate the character. And so this is what I mean by gaming is far more ahead, regardless of all the scandals that are going on with, you know, with things like, for the most part, I think that the culture that creates games is open-minded. You know, they're ahead of their time. You know, they understand diversity and inclusion more so than any other industry, I want to say. You know, because I find that even media, you look at TV shows, right? Shows are put out to kind of laugh at us minorities, not to elevate us, right? And so, you know, for many, many years, the shows that have been put out haven't been representations of us in a good light. You know, we've always been the comical character, the kind of token character, right? Like, you know, and I think media did that because, you know, they wanted to continue making money. And I think video games were always, those organizations were always willing to take a chance, you know? And when you see the dynamics between these diverse characters, right? It's never, I don't know, I don't want to say it's never exaggerated, right? They're not saying like, look, ooh, me, I'm a Hispanic character, I'm a black character, so I check the box. You know, it's very realistic. Like you look at something like Gears of War, for example, right? Like these are brothers that are kind of in a battle for their lives. They're not worried about you being black, you being Hispanic, you being white, right? They're worried about goddamn alien horde coming to destroy them, right? And so I appreciate that versus the forced, you know, issues where like, let's talk about it just because, you know, now is the time, right? And that doesn't solve the problem, you know, and that's my biggest issue with these characters, you know, that come on mainstream media. It's a false fix, and you know, I've been talking for a while. And I'm sorry. And, you know,
no, go ahead, dude. This is good stuff. This is good stuff.
But you know, like I look at where we are now, you know, at least in gaming, and I think we're so far ahead. You know, like you know, you look at awesome games like Horizon, right? Another amazing female lead, right? Fighting games, you know, yes, they've always had folks. Women have always been over sexualized,
yeah.
You know, but like there was always, you know, the characters were always strong characters. Like I remember Street Fighter, you know, after I got bored of playing with Ken and Ryu, I was all about Chun-Li. You know, like she was my character for like the longest time, and she was, you know, an ace, and she could go up against anybody on that roster. You know, she just wasn't slapped on. She was a real contender, you know, and so, you know, you look at Sonya, right, and Mortal Kombat, like, you know, there's just a lot of progression, I think, in that realm, and so we shouldn't be. I'd say we need to keep on top of the folks that are not doing the right things, you know. But we should also celebrate the ones that are doing the right things and creating these amazing characters, strong female leads and strong minorities, and putting them out there and shining a light on them too. You know, there's always bad, right? But we have to, you know, we have to shine a light on the good so they keep doing the good.
Yeah. And we had a couple comments, and Liliana just had chimed in. She said, agreed. I think they also need to make sure that they actually address, like you were saying, Shadow, the minority issues with these characters, not just switch them out.
Absolutely.
And that's testament, I mean, paramount to it, right? But I love what you said, because you brought up with respect to Miles Morales, that And to think it's only a 10-hour, and I milked it. It's only like a 10-hour campaign. I milked it to 100% because I knew,
Yeah.
but it was great to see it because it hits close for both of us, right? In the New York area and Puerto Rican
Absolutely.
descent, and like you said, the background around it, and and so that one had a little bit of that culture in it, right? It
Mhm.
had a little bit of that kind of culture in it, and I think that's better to have that, or have stories like you said, characters. And I think what ends up happening to that, right, Shadow, kind of taking it to some of the other things within gaming, right? It really has to be developers, and we need more developers to come up with more people with ideas, more developers, because it's like what you described when you think about it from the medias that we talked about. Not only when you talk about music, right, and you talk about the Wu paid much homage to the Asian culture, and I went to concerts a long time ago, and RZA is just deep, like he's honorary. I mean, not just on the Chappelle show, where in the
Yeah.
racial draft they got selected, the Asian contingency selected the Wu-Tang Clan and
Yeah.
made them honorary. They really are honorary, right? I mean, he's done a lot of stuff for that, and they pay homage and have a lot of respect for the culture. But you see that if we have more, like I went to school in an arts high school, the Fame equivalent out of Paterson, New Jersey. Shout out to Rosa Parks, with a lot of people that ended up being in art, right? And obviously it was a minority school. So the weekend just had a video done that was in Anaheim, and that
Mhm.
was done by two guys from my high school, twins, the Isom brothers. Shout out to them. And they have an Anaheim studio in Japan for like, I think 10 years plus, right? And they're out there, and that's what I love to see, right? Because that is when you're paying homage. It's not cultural appropriation. It's not none of that stuff that people try to say Elvis stole rock and roll or whatever from blacks. It's dude. And at the end of the day, all my kids are mixed. My babies are all mixed, right? Two or three of them are in the chat right now. And that's what I know that it's cliche now to say I don't see color, I don't see race and anything like that. But we can't we need to have more people of color, more people of not only color, genders, right? More women, right? It's amazing to me. I see it, and I have 4 girls and everything like that. And I see it, to see the representation. And my wife, Liliana, the lovely Liliana there, CEO of JLS Gaming, CEO of JLS Tech, to see these people be in gaming and everything like that, it's just, I love it. And I love the ideas that come from these people. And that's what I think. We need more people to be encouraged. We need more STEM, whatever you want to call it, more. And that's why with me, a lot of the things I do outside of gaming are around that, are around building up minorities, building up disadvantaged, building up these socioeconomic challenged people, because it then we're gonna have it where when we're old, when we're like 100 and something years old, like Steve Rogers and Endgame and everything like that, and we're sitting there and we see our great 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 grandkids, right? We're gonna see, wow, how all the stuff that we have experienced and read about, right? Going to schools and reading about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, that kind of stuff, Christopher Columbus, right? Which hits close to home for us. That's why I brought it up, right?
Yeah.
You know, we are going to see something that's going to be very positive, and that's what really keeps me. And I love it. I love gaming. I think gaming is universal. Definitely, people need to get, because it's underrepresented in terms of developers, right? Black, minority,
Absolutely.
women developers, women people in those higher positions. That's where, listen, if you guys are out there, right, in the game industry, you got 2 executive IT people, executive technologists here of minority descent, that you could get there instead of having the whitewashing where you take somebody from another organization that doesn't know crap about video games and you put them in executive positions, right? A lot of our friends, Shadow, and I'm sorry, now I'm talking a lot of our friends have worked at GameStops, right? At the corner, everything like that, at the mall, the strip mall, whatever like that. I tried working for GameStop in an executive capacity, and I didn't get a call back. I could have did the job, right?
Yeah.
They're out there in whatever Grapevine, Texas. I could have went out there as a director of information security, right? Help them, or you. I know you. I know you've done a lot of things in product development. That app is always crap. I can never get in there and see my damn trade imbalance. You know what I'm trying to say? I see my orders, no matter how many updates they do on it, right? It flat out is crap. They could put us in those kind of positions, but they don't, right? Because again, it ends up being unconscious bias, right? So all these people are hiring people that they know from another company they worked in together, as opposed to there's a lot of people like us that are gamers that got bachelor's, master's degrees, great certifications, and can do the job. And for gamers by gamers. Stop looking at the color. Stop sitting there and saying, well, I don't know Shadow because he's from New York. I don't know Will because he's from New Jersey, right? No, like, give us a chance. And I think we can uplift the organizations.
And that's the biggest issue. You hit the nail right on the head. There is what I like to call the minority toll gate in a lot of these situations. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. I've met people from these Ivy League schools, and I'm going to tell you right now, the only difference between them and I has been the $200,000 to $300,000 they spent on their education.
That's it.
Because and don't get me wrong, I've met some really smart folks that have come from those schools, but for the most part, a lot of the folks that I have met have not been any better than me. And these ridiculous toll gates that people go through in an interview process for these technical roles, right? And you and I have spoken about this, where you're being questioned just because you did not grow up with the silver spoon in your mouth. You did not go into the industry with Uncle John kind of padding your path for you, and people ignore these things, but they're still there. I've sat in conversations and in a hiring panel where but this candidate came from Yale, and I've sat there and I've said, so what does that have to do with anything? They were horrible. They are the type of person that if you put them in a leadership position, they will demoralize an entire team immediately.
And that's why I'm gonna bring up two organizations that I really like, and I know there's plenty out there. So guys, if you guys know anyone else, any other organizations, I'm not missing it. I know there's a lot out there, right? On purpose, send it to us, and I'll give them a shout out on the next show or on our Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Industry Gaming. This is for the LGBTQ plus community, right? Great website. It just launched, I think, earlier this month or beginning of last month. But even on there, they have employment tips and advice, a job board, student zone, a thing for content creators, all around that, right? Because this is just true, right? So this is for not only, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, to sit there and have that. There's also, another one I want to bring up, that this one, and they just had, if we had did this show a week earlier, we would have been able to plug it. They just had for 3 days, they had their professional boot camp, and it was completely free. It was on Twitch, and they had the power of mentoring and networking, which is huge. Growing an influencer management career, upgrading your LinkedIn, career growth, the fight against self-limiting behavior and choices, right? Chatting with founders of multiple gaming companies, right? Esports, gaming shops, development shops, marketing, right? Digital marketing shop, the toxicity in esports, right? Around that, right? That kind of stuff. And this was just Friday. Then Saturday, they had Build Your Career, right? A panel about building a career. Why personal leadership? Advocating for your personal brand, even self-care and good boundaries, right? Because that's another thing, right? With these and in these times, it's mental health is huge, right?
Absolutely.
Health is wealth, and a lot of times there was always this stigma around mental health for the longest time, and we're in this. I don't want to say it because then I always get these copyright things or they don't want to. So we're in this current time that we're in, right? And people are having this fatigue, Zoom fatigue or cabin fever because they can't get out. They can't get around and about because Will, and I mean, like I'd be in New York at some point and me and you I'd be like, hey, let's get together for dinner, right? Let's get together for lunch, right? And right now we're having this virtually, but definitely at the end of this year, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to make it out there to events and everything like that. We're going to break bread with people and with fans, but mental health. But these guys, these are helping because we want that representation. We want that, and we want those great ideas, right? Because the next Final Fantasy VII, which that's my favorite game, that's why I'm bringing it up. I ain't gonna speak for you, Shadow. We brought it up earlier. The next Final Fantasy VII, the next great game idea, the next even Among Us, it's gonna come from somebody that's right now underrepresented, and hopefully with characters that represent that, right? Modern family type characters, right? Gay, lesbian, transsexual, whatever characters, right? Hispanic, mixed culture, right? Miss Marvel is coming out soon in Disney Plus too, with our Muslim brothers and sisters, right? And everything like that. And hopefully people embrace it and we just all start seeing each other. That when me and you were little, man, right? We are the world type stuff. For us to finally see it, 30 years later, 40 years later.
And it's, I'm glad you brought that up because when we grew up, mental illness was a stigma, right? And it was something that you didn't want to be branded with, and I share whenever I can because I think it's important because people need to see that you can be successful and survive things like that. But, after 9/11 happened, I lost my job. My household fell apart. A lot of that. I was probably clinically depressed, and I saw a therapist for a bit. They prescribed Prozac, wasn't for me. My mood felt I couldn't be happy, I couldn't be sad. I was just always in the middle. And I was able to get over it because I pushed myself. I went biking, I was exercising every day. I created my own regimen. I'm not saying that that's going to work for everyone. I'm just telling y'all what I did for myself. But it was a very real thing to be in that place. And I had no one to turn to that I could talk about it, and so what I want to say while we're here, right, is, if you're feeling a certain way, you talk to somebody, talk to your best friend, talk to your parents, talk to your, because you'd be surprised. We're in a different time, than we were back then. And some of the rules are still the same. Your parents are still your parents. They care about you. If you're going through something, turn to them, talk to them. If you're an adult going through something, your friends, your family, and family doesn't have to be blood. Family can be the people that you consider family. Lean on someone's shoulder, tell them what you're feeling, tell them what you're going through. And this goes, back to representation. We talk about, these are topics that were taboo before, and now we're seeing them, come into games. And treat it respectfully, right? Like that's the big thing, right? Before it was like that person's crazy, right? Now it's the right terminology is being used. People are doing the research, representing the characters in the right way. I believe I want to say Hellblade. What was the name of the game? I think it's Hellblade, where she's kind of going through a psychotic break. But it was very well done. And it was just another example of developers taking the time to represent a group that was underrepresented, and I think that's very important. And then you brought it up, like with the communities that we have now, it's still very much represented as the heterosexual culture, right? Like it's you see that heavily in most games, and I get it. And like this is something that I think we need to fix, but cancel culture I don't feel fixes a lot of things because it doesn't have the conversation, right? We're kind of saying this person is this and we're getting rid of them, and the conversations that need to happen aren't happening. And I've played with a lot of gamers online, and I've heard the most horrible things, just like you have. I'm pretty sure. Every single word that you could use against any group, I've heard, and I've always seen it as an opportunity for myself to change the view of the person on the other side. Because I feel that canceling a person doesn't do that, right? Well, all they're gonna do is still walk away feeling like a jerk and then hating the other group even more, right? I'm pretty sure nobody walked away after being canceled saying, you know what, I get it now, I'm gonna be a better person. No, they're probably like, that minority, that this, that, I hate them even more now, right? And I've played with people from all over the world. I've heard it all. And when I hear those things, I've had a really honest conversation. I'm like, why do you feel that way? And
Yep.
it's weird because gaming has been the medium to
Yep.
cause this chat to happen offline about culture and what we've seen. And I've had a lot of players that I played with in the South, me and my wife, who sounded very racist. And you'd hear, and we pulled them to the side and we say, like, because they play with us and never showed these things, and it would be representations of what they learned from their parents, right, or their
Mm-hmm.
environment. And then when they found out we were minorities, they were shocked because they're like, "But you guys are so cool, right?" And we didn't blow
Yeah.
up at them. We took that as an opportunity to show them, like, not everyone is what you see on television or what someone's telling you. Even if that person has had their own experiences that have been negative, that's not everyone. And
Yeah.
so, like, it's interesting how gaming has also been this medium to bring people from diverse backgrounds together, but I think
Yeah.
it could also be used to heal, right? And there's a lot of healing that we need to go through right now, my friend. There's a
Yep.
lot of stuff going on, and canceling people is fine, but as you can see, it doesn't stop the violence. It doesn't stop the things that are happening. The only thing that really does that is conversation, honest conversation, love, right? Like, it's a true thing. I believe it. Like, sometimes people wild out. They say the craziest things, and that's because they're broken. Something's going on with them,
Yeah.
and more often than not, I found the broken thing when I've taken the time to talk to people, and I haven't been successful every time, but you know what? I've turned a lot of people around from that thinking, and put them on a more positive path, and I know I have because I've been in a room with these kids that they were kids at one point and they're adults now, and we're playing Call of Duty and somebody, drops the M bomb and they're like, "Hey man, don't say that. That's not cool." And this is coming from, a kid 5 years ago, that was, like, dropping it left and right and
Oh yeah.
saying the most horrific things. But you know what? When they got somebody to guide them and to be like, "Listen, that's not how we do things," like, it can help change.
Yeah.
And I'm all about us healing and growing, man. And gaming
Oh
is a
yeah.
good way to do that.
Liliana put a good link, and then I want to take you to a question. She put the place was Center for Suicide Awareness.org, and they have a representative on there that's strictly for gaming, right? So they
Amazing.
have a dedicated member on gaming. Here's a good question that I want you to take here. All right, Shadow. Do you guys have any thoughts about The Last of Us Part 2? And the reason I'm having you taking it is because my back catalog is Last of Us 1 and Part 2. So, spoiler alert, I'll cover my ears or whatever, but there was a lot of discontent with that game due to the representation politics. Now, I did hear about this when it came out and everything like that. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm gonna have to apologize because this is one of those games that I was just, from a storytelling perspective, I was not happy with the way things shifted.
Yep.
As far as the I don't want to ruin anything for you because I know you haven't
No, no,
beat
no.
it.
Go ahead. Go ahead. The fans and
Neither have
everything.
I. Neither have I. But somebody ruined it for me. But
Oh, okay.
like, it wasn't the same experience as the first game, and so before even getting into the politics, I had already kind of exited out because I was like, this is not what I signed up for, and it's not really what I wanted. Um, so I don't know, what to say to the things that are going on. But now I know, you know, Ellie evolved as a character, right? I know that from a romance standpoint, she had things going on, right? And the communities were kind of had mixed feelings about that. What I want to say is, in these situations, it's hard because we need more representation and we need to have more conversations, right? And
Yeah.
so, I think it's very easy for us to attack some of these development groups that are putting some of this stuff out there. But the point is, I think a lot of them are earnestly trying, right? They just don't understand. And so we need to help them understand what's the right way to represent this type of experience. What's the right way to represent what someone is going through? Because they don't, right? And it's like, I say it all the time. I have friends from all walks of life, uh, all going through different things, and I can't put, as much as I want to, I can't put myself fully in their shoes, right? I have to depend on them to talk me through what they're going through and why they feel this way. And so, I think, and like I said, I think a lot of these developers, these companies are trying, and some of it may feel like it's shoehorned, but I think unlike like movies and television, I think they are trying to do the right thing for the most part, and they need guidance, right? And so what I do see is a lot of attacks, but not enough information, right? Like, oh, this is terrible representation. Okay, well, let's help them. Let's tell them what the right representation is. What should have they done, right? Because you don't see that, right? Like I read through all the comments, bro, and very rarely will I see someone actually, it's like pointing out something that's broken. Like, okay, yeah, it's broken. How do we fix it, right? And I always tell people that work for me, like, don't just point out the problem, right? Because we know the problem's there. Tell me how we can fix it. And that goes with this too. If as we continue to have representation in all these different communities, right? We need to help them on this journey, right? So they didn't do it right. This is a great opportunity to offer yourself up as an advisor, as a consultant, right? Like, hey, you can hire me. I know this very well. Like, let me get in there. Or for those of us, this may not be as attractive, but if you're up there and you represent any of these communities, maybe you want to do some pro bono work and contact these folks and say, hey, I'm an exec at this corporation and yada, yada, yada. I want to give you some feedback on this project that you had, and use that title to push things along.
I'm going to segue real quick to T-Jax asking a question. And then I want your thoughts on this question, right,
Sure.
Shadow? And then I want you to tell everybody where to find you and stuff like that, right? As we wrap it up, we're nearing an hour, right? But what T-Jax is asking us, and he's going to be on the show in 2 weeks because next Sunday is Easter. He's going to be on the show in 2 weeks, T-Jax, right? We're going to be talking about game collecting, right? Shadow, if you want to join us too, you could join us. We want to talk about game collecting now, in the past, and in the future, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic that we'll give a sneak peek to, because I'm going to be speaking at a couple of events towards the end of the year. Midwestern Gaming Classic, or whatever it's called, Retropalooza, up there by you. I'm trying to get to the one in Long Island as well. So hopefully when we're past this, it'll remain nameless. But now, again, what T-Jax is saying, now, I think it'll be successful, right? Because they're waiting for exclusives and everybody that's justified a PS5, which, by the way, we're giving away a PS5, guys, once we hit 25,000 subs. So like, subscribe, comment for your chances to go in. But so people can really play, except instead of just upscaled versions or bug snacks or whatever like that, right? That they're clamoring for these. I know I'm waiting, like you said earlier, really for the DLC or the added content with Tifa or whatever it is, and that the other gentleman for the Final Fantasy Intra Mix or whatever it's called. But that's the stuff that, yes, I'm looking forward to it. But I am a bit disappointed that they're saying some games are coming out better, and I don't know if it's the development thing, right? I don't know or it is a true power thing. How are games being better for Xbox Series X versus PS5 in terms of frame rate, pure graphics and stuff like that? But what are your thoughts, Shadow?
Well, so going on T-Jax's thoughts on next gen. First of all, I'm a huge Ratchet and Clank fan. It's weird because I felt like, I've personally always felt it was a niche kind of series, even though it has a lot of fame, but it's not Mario, right? Like, people aren't, you have the conversation and sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I remember that game. You have to walk them through it. I've always found that series to be fantastic, whether it was on PSP, PS2, PS3, like, every iteration of that game has always been fun and great to me. I think the characters are awesome. I think it's all going to boil down to the marketing, honestly. The good thing is people are still not going to have a lot of actual PS5 games to choose from, right? And so I think that puts it in a very unique situation where, for the first time, it has the opportunity to be a front runner versus coming in kind of after the fact in the generations and the other releases that we've seen, right? This affords an opportunity to be exposed almost, right? So we'll have to see, because I think it's a great series, and it has a lot of potential. And I haven't met one person that's picked it up and played it and said this sucked, right? I've recommended it to folks, and they've looked at me like I was crazy. But they've loved it. They've all loved it. So, I'm pushing it. Like, I will push it. The other game that I think, is going to do great, even though it's one of those mixes, dude, it's Outriders, which is, I don't know if you've seen the demo. They're not paying me. They're not plugging me. But I suggest, if you want a great time, go download it. It's Square Enix with People Can Fly, like those two just together. When I heard that they were working on something, I was like, wow, this is gonna be great. It's basically kind of like Borderlands without the comedy. It's a more serious Borderlands. It's like an RPG shooter. And you got Square behind it, so they're building this amazing storyline, dropping co-op. Like, I'm all excited about that. And the best part is that the demo now, you can actually transfer everything you earned in the demo to the full version, which is out like April 1st. I did the smart delivery. It's all ready to go, brother. Like, I'm set. So that, and Monster Hunter Rise, another one, which is keeping.
Oh yeah, on the Switch.
Yeah, these things are keeping the Switch alive, right? The third parties keep releasing these gems on there, and it's going to keep that system going. And I've always said, it's not how pretty the game is, right? It's how much fun it is, right? And so you can make. What is it, Werewolf? Did you see that game? I was really excited about it. It was supposed to be a really great. It was. It's a game where for the first time you get to play a werewolf, right, and have werewolf powers. I'm like, that's cool. Like, I played a vampire, and I love that, right?
On which on Switch?
No. This is on the PS4 and Xbox One, and so it's really cheap now because it kind of sucked. It was a good-looking game, but it's very boring. They didn't put any real thought into it. It's just they're like, oh, we're just gonna lean on the laurels of this is a werewolf, and people just want to play being a werewolf. And I guess that's that lazy development we've talked about.
Hopefully, Nintendo figures out how to finally do voice chat, because I think another one that's going to keep it alive is when Splatoon 3 comes out, right? And the whole, with that being esports, because Super Smash Brothers, they just keep that alive with all the DLC and stuff like that. So I think it really can be that kind of platform. Oh, here's one thing that I wish they would have put in. The Vita, when it first came out, had 3G, when 3G was hot at the time,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Then the Switch Pro, if they put 5G in there, I think it would be phenomenal, where you can finally have true. Because the problem with the Vita and the 3G and why they killed it at the time, it was, I always get these two confused. It's the one where I think it's asynchronous, where basically kind of like an RPG where you do a command, it executes, then the next person, or you're playing Uno, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to how a fighting game. Even though the fighting games, they have that mechanics behind the scene, which does it, which is what anticipates the inputs, right? Because of lag, right? Otherwise, it would always be laggy if it wasn't for this technology that does matchmaking and all that stuff for online fighting games. That I don't hear people clamoring for that. Like, have it truly portable, mobile, throw in a damn thing. The Vita did it back in the day with a price point that I think was less than what you're saying the Switch Pro should be. And I know we're way over time, but that's just my little rant. It's like, why are you not putting 5G? Or Sony, maybe you guys can come out with the Vita too, man.
I would be the first one to, dude, like, I don't know. It wouldn't matter where I need to stand online. And, the crazy thing is, you'll laugh, but I still buy Vita games. Like, the Vita PlayAsia has their own little company that releases Vita games every few months. They're not like huge overarch, but they're cool little games for it, and they come in collector's editions. And, I have a soft spot for anything that's like a limited edition.
Oh, yeah.
So, I find myself ordering this stuff, and they're finally killing it. Like, Sony is finally putting the final nails in the coffin. They're closing the shops, Vita store down in the summer, I hear. And I don't understand why. it was such an amazing little console, honestly. Like I love it. I love the form factor, I love the look and feel, the OLED screen. Like it was just
Yes.
so
Oh, I forgot about that. The
that's
original,
right.
yeah, the first one had and I have that one. The original has the
Yeah.
3G and it has an
And
OLED
it
screen.
has the OLED screen.
So
And so
Switch fans, come on, man. The Vita had a damn OLED screen like 8 years ago.
but here's the thing, and here's the difference between Nintendo and Sony, right? Nintendo wants to make money on the hardware as well out the gate, right? And
Yeah.
so they always sell underperforming, hardware because they get it much cheaper, and they make a huge margin on these devices when they sell them because they're not cutting edge. And so Sony and Microsoft have always taken these systems at a loss in the beginning, because for
Mhm.
them it's about the licensing, right? So Microsoft's always understood, it's about having software, it's about how many systems I have in a household, because I'm going to recoup all that based on every game they buy because I make money off of the licenses. Now,
Yeah.
Nintendo's always been really cheap when it comes to this. And this is why they also make a huge amount of money, right? Because when they release a new console, they make a very decent margin on each one sold, while, Sony and Microsoft take a hit on each console
Yep.
sold in the beginning. And so they should give us 5G because they have streaming games that they sell. Like if you can buy Hitman 3, I think now, um, for Switch. Now, the weird thing about it is you don't really have the game. You stream the game from their service. I think that's a little weird. I think that's kind of deceptive in my opinion, because like you have this game and you think you really kind of own it, but you're on this weird service where you don't know if it's going to be around tomorrow, right? It's not like Steam.
Exactly.
Like they can kill this tomorrow, and then these games that you bought that you thought you own, you can't even download, right? It's dead because it's not streamable.
And save that. You hear what he just said. So in 2 weeks, when we got TJAX, right? That's one of the key things, right? It's you own a physical copy of what, right? If there's day one, day zero patches, remember Final Fantasy VII, going back to that again, man. The remake, right? The ending, I believe, or was it Kingdom Hearts 3? The ending wasn't even available. It was a day one patch, even though people got one on the back of a truck or something, and people were selling the game like 2 months in advance or something like that. But it was incomplete because you have to download on day one the ending or the last
crazy.
level and everything like that to avoid spoilers. And it's like, yeah, this what is it exactly that you're getting? With that said, dude, we can talk forever, right? Quick shout outs, TJAX, JLS Gaming Team. So that's Willow, Olivia, James, the beautiful Liliana LaSalle. And that's her full name, by the way, right? She changed it and everything like that. But Shadow, tell everybody where they can find you and everything like that. Tell everybody your channel that you promised everybody today that you're going to be putting out a lot more content on. Tell them about your IG. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Tell them about everything.
Yep. So you can find me at YouTube and on Instagram at thatgamedragon.com. The website is still being worked on, but just at that Game Dragon on both of those mediums, Instagram and YouTube. You can see all the crazy things that I'm trying to do, and give me ideas. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you want to see. And then as far as JLS Gaming, I would love to come to the next show. So let me know. We can chat it up about all the retro stuff that's going on and what we're doing, and I'll be more than happy to give my crazy insights.
No problem, no problem. So we'll have episode 62, a quick one on Wednesday. We'll catch up with more of the news since we had the Game Dragon on, and we were talking about diversity in gaming and such a great topic. We'll catch up with some of the news and everything like that on Wednesday. And the final thing is, I know Clubhouse is closed beta or public beta or whatever like that. In about 2 weeks, they'll have it on Android or whatever like that. Follow us on Clubhouse, right? Add us or join Clubhouse. I have some invites. If you guys have, it's iPhone only. Although I'm gonna experiment later on tonight, and if I could get it running on my N1 Mac, right? And then because I want to do some crazy stuff on there with like voice modulation and a soundboard and everything, right? So anyway, so follow us on there. There's a lot of discussions that happen similar to this discussion. There's also there's some where you can do a quick 60-second thing. Check this out, Shadow. Quick 60-second elevator pitch to hiring managers, right? In all over gaming that are looking for good people, etc. I was on a clubhouse, right, room, and a gentleman that does stuff for P-Funk, George Clinton, right, was in there, had some ideas and everything like that around gaming and stuff like that, and got connected, right, with a developer and everything like that. And there's some people. There's actually, I saw a CEO of a development shop that's in the VR AR space that they just got some money and at $1 billion valuation, which that's a unicorn, right? For those that don't know, right? I'm not trying to be condescending, but Clubhouse it's huge, man, and you can meet people, you can talk with people. But think about that. There's people getting jobs by going in there and having that kind of access with people, and that's just talking about gaming. There's people in there about blockchain, real estate, musicians, artists, people doing NFT art, right? On the crypto and everything like that. So check out Clubhouse, man. Add us, right? If you're on Android, it'll be open. I heard it's in beta, but I heard it'll be open on the Android, the Google Play Store in about a couple of weeks.
Okay, I heard you're gonna be buying some of my NFTs of my face. So let me know.
Dude, I'm gonna be trading. Yeah, we gotta trade collecting cards, man. We gotta, get some. I'm gonna NFT my baby pics. I'm trying to say, so that way when I get famous, that's the best rookie card, right? I just put in a nice baby pic of Will A.K. LaSalle, man. But as always, man, love all you guys, everybody. So thanks. We'll see you guys on Wednesday, and peace.